Okay. When I was a little girl, we had a cat. We just called him, what was his name? I can't think right now what was his name. But anyway, he was an old tomcat. He's black and white, and we had Kitty. That's what we called him. Kitty. Hey, Kitty. And he'd go out, and he'd tom all night, and pretty soon, some days he didn't come home. And for 2 or 3 days, and then 2 or 3 days later, he'd come home, and he'd be like, he'd have holes in his head, or his ear torn off, or his paw was all chewed up and everything, and we couldn't figure out what he was fighting, but he was fighting with other cats or dogs or something. And this one time he came home and his leg was really bad, his front leg. And Mother said, my mother had taken a first aid course, and so she took care of us kids. I mean, like, my brother fell on we had one of those 5-gallon tin buckets, you know, and it was cut off, and it was full of nails, and my brother Richard fell on it, and he cut his arm right across here, real deep cut, and she bound it up and compressed it so that we could go get stitches in it, but it was pretty deep. And then, so she used to cure everything that was around. I very seldom went to the doctor when I was little. I had my tonsils out, and there was one other, a couple of times. I can remember going only a couple of times. And anyway, this cat came home, and so Mom looked at it, and we cleaned it up, we washed it out, and then she put some ointment on it, and she bound it up. No, I don't think she put ointment on it. She put some kind of powder in. And then we bound it up, and of course the cat kept trying to get it off, and so we had to tape over the, you know, she just had rags, stripped rags, and she wrapped it around the thing. And pretty soon the cat started getting better. So we left it off, and she looked good, and those holes were healing up, and she was keeping them clean with licking them all the time. And she did the natural thing that Heavenly Father has cats do, to lick up their wounds, and then she was okay. And she did this 2 or 3 times, I remember. One time we even smashed up a penicillin pill and put in the wound, because it was, I think it was when it was in her head. And it was down in her head, and her ear was practically torn off. And so Mother put in some antibiotics and penicillin pill, smashed it up and put it in her. And so anyway, this really fascinated me. And so I used to play with my dolls that I was going to be a nurse. And I remember this time, my mother was by the stove, and she was stirring some jelly. It was currant jelly from our bushes in back. And I walked in, and I had made this box, and I put a strap on it. And in the box were all these little bottles that I had found around the house or collected around the house. They were empty, but I just put them all in my little box, and that was and I put some rags and stuff in for my bandages. And I walked into the kitchen, and I said to my mother that I know what I want to be when I grow up. And she was stirring this jelly, and she just took it in her other hand, started stirring it, and she said, "What would that be?" And I said, "I want to be a nurse." And she said, "Well, that's wonderful, darling. But remember, to be a wife and a mother is the most important thing you can be." And I thought, okay, I can be that. So I went out, and I came back in, and I said, I think I want to be a missionary too. Because I really liked the missionaries. They came every week, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, depending on whether it was the elders going up and down the street or the sisters. We had sisters and we had elders, and we called them lady missionaries in those days. So we had the lady missionaries and the elders that came. And there was this one elder, his name was Elder Stedman, and he just loved coming to our house. But he said one time he called us the Happy Hot Dog Kids. How's the Happy Hot Dog Kids? And I said, why do you call us the Happy Hot Dog Kids? And he said, because we always have hot dogs when we go to your house. So that's what, but I remember listening to the sisters talk about being a missionary and how they were so excited because they'd given a Book of Mormon away, or they were so excited because they taught this lesson. And I thought, oh, that would be really neat to be able to do that. And so I just always wanted to be a lady missionary, and I'm still friends with, some of you might know Elaine McLean. She used to be Sister Scown, and when she was a missionary, I was about 14 by that time, when she came to town. But I remember, and I just kind of make friends with all the, and we used to be the thing that we collect these little temple cards. I have some in here. But anyway, we collect cards that they just had a picture of the Salt Lake Temple, and they have the missionary's address and the mission and their mission address of the mission. And then one time when I was 15, I remember coming up the steps, and the mission president was there, and he found a key on the walk of the church, on the step of the church, and he picked it up and he said, "Here, Missy, lock up your heart until you serve the Lord." So I thought that meant that I could go on a mission. So that was one of the signs of going on a mission. And so then but then I wanted to be this nurse. I kept thinking, how can I be a nurse and a missionary and a mother? I said, okay, I'm going to be a nurse. So I went to nursing school at BYU, and in those days they had the 4-year program. And so I went to the, signed up, and I was on the 4-year program. And then this guy decided he wanted to marry me. And he asked me to marry him. And I thought, I don't know. Because I hadn't done everything I wanted to do before I got married and started having kids. And he was a good priesthood holder. He probably would have made a good husband in that, but I just didn't feel like it was the right thing. But I just realized that, well, maybe because they were just starting the 2-year program at BYU. And so I thought, okay, I'll go on the 2-year program. And so I changed from the 4-year program to the 2-year program so I could get through faster and be graduated, and then I could get a year experience in before 21 when I went on my mission. Well, I was a little bit more than 21 when I went on my mission. But anyway, that's how I thought. So I planned it that way, and I'd always wanted, when I was a little girl in primary, we used to give, every time we had a birthday, we could bring pennies of what our birthday was. So 5 pennies makes a nickel, 2 nickels make a dime, 10 dimes will make $1. How will make it shine? I'm sorry, it's not the right tune, but anyway. And so I remember singing that song in primary, and then they'd sing happy birthday to you and everything after you put your pennies in this little piggy bank, because at that time they were starting to build Primary Children's Hospital. And I always thought it would be neat to be a nurse in Primary Children's Hospital. It'd be so fun, and especially when I became a babysitter and at 13 I became a primary teacher. And so I thought, oh wow, I'm going to be a nurse someday in Primary Children's Hospital. So I went to primary until I was 12, and then a year later, Sister Lorimer asked me to be one of her primary teachers, and so the bishop, or not the bishop, it was the branch president, said, okay, we can put her in as a primary teacher. So they made me a primary teacher. And so then I was always a primary teacher, even though I wasn't much.
13.
At 13. And I was like, until I was 18 and went to college. So I was a primary teacher all that time. And I used to teach the stars, which are the 5-year-olds. And so, anyway, it was just always so fun. We'd learn the songs, and to teach the kids. And there were so many kids I just saw grow up because I was teaching them in primary, and then they grow up and graduate from primary, and here come the other bunch, It was just really fun. And so, anyway, then I went to college, and after graduation from nurses training, I went and applied for a job at Primary Children's Hospital. I trained at LDS Hospital, the big LDS hospital. I trained in Murray. It used to be the maternity hospital, but then they made it a regular full-time hospital. And then we did our pediatric training in Primary Children's Hospital. And I was really excited about this because the 4-year girls only got to train at the hospital here in Provo. And so I felt like this was really where I was meant to be, was so I could be in Primary Children's Hospital. And so when I was training in Primary Children's Hospital, I loved every minute. It was so great and everything. And I was really good at giving shots, but because you had to hold the kid down and you had to give the shot really fast before the kid kicked the syringe out of your hand. So, oops. And so anyway, that's kind of, it was just fun. And then while I was working at Primary Children's Hospital, I also taught primary again. So everywhere I went, I taught primary. And so anyway, that's why I became a nurse. And then after, about a year after I graduated from nurses training and had a year experience under my belt, I felt I was okay. I could go away for a little while and then come back and be able to get a job because I would have experience. And so then everybody was buying cars. All my friends were buying cars and getting married and everything. And I kept thinking, I don't want to do that yet. And I don't want to spend that money on a car. So my dad had me get this little, it was a little Rambler. He liked Ramblers in those days. So it was a Rambler, and it was a little green one. And it was a great little car for going back and forth to work and everything, and driving home once in a while. I mean, it was a pretty good little used car, and I got it for like $400. Oh, too, I was really glad to be earning lots of money, I thought, in those days. But anyway, I earned my first paycheck, or my wage was about $340 a month for the whole month. That was all I got. And that doesn't sound like much, but it was a pretty good wage in those days. And so, gasoline was what, 19 cents a gallon? So that shows you a little bit about where we were at. So anyway, after I had about a year's experience, I decided to go on a mission. And I really felt good about it. I prayed about it, but I was really scared because I was afraid all these gals at Primary Children's Hospital had all gone to China, and I thought, I don't think I could learn Chinese. Oh, Father, you know, if I'm called to China, please help me. And so
they went on missions to China.
They went on. Yeah, they had come back and worked at Primary Children's Hospital, but they went on missions to China. And
Mainland
one
China.
went to Thailand, Taiwan, went to where's that other one? Hong Kong. One went, you know, there were several that had served in Japan. Others, you know, seemed like it was all the Asian missions. I think there was one that went to Sweden or something, but other than that, everybody was being called to these, and I kept thinking, oh, I don't know if I could learn that language, because I had taken Latin and French, and I just didn't know if I could learn anything that wasn't a Romantic language. And so, anyway, they decided that, or when I got my mission call, I was called to go to the Andes mission, which covered Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. And the mission home was in Lima, Peru. And I was called for 27 months, 3 months in the LTM, or the language training mission, and MTC, what they call now the MTC, and then two full years in the mission field like the elders were. And so that's how it all started with my mission call. But when I got back from that, I kept thinking, I don't want to go home. Please, Lord, don't let this move, you know. But the president of the mission said, Hermana, it's time to go home and continue your life. So I came home, but I was going to make sure that I married somebody who could take me on lots of missions when we got older, after we had our children. There you have it.